let's begin the show. And as we rewind 2020 and more importantly go into 2021, we decided to analyze what it was like for the primary markets. We're ending the year with Burger King and Mrs. Bector's IPOs. Let's go across to our guest. We'll be talking more about this. Mahantesh, the head of retail research at SBI Cap Securities, and Deepak Shenoy, the founder of Capital Mind. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on India Development Debate. This is Nayantara Rai. Mahantesh, let me come to you first. So we've seen the IPOs of 2020 being scrumptious. I'm just using a phrase right now because the newest ones are Burger King and Mrs. Bector's. But they have all been in the green. But to be fair, look at the kind of run our markets have also had, especially in the last couple of months after the massive sell-off. Going into 2021, what is it looking like for the primary markets? And, competing with the old economy stocks in 2021, you could very well soon see competition coming in from the unicorns, from the startup space. The private space has anyway been picking up, and the government is soon going to be coming out with guidelines for startups listings, secondary listing, overseas listings, all of that.
So, Nayantara, the moot point here is that we have had an unexpectedly strong primary market, and that's thanks to some of these companies that have been brought to the market being either highly quality kind of companies, high quality companies, or unique in terms of their presence, because we have had such companies who have no parallels in terms of comparable peers in the market. Look at Route Mobile, for example. It's in cloud services. There are very few listed entities who are who can be compared with Route Mobile. Or let's look at even some time ago we had IRCTC come in. It's virtually a monopoly in the space that they are in. And of course we've had this companies like Burger King, etc. coming in. I would reckon these are quality companies that have been coming into the market. And thankfully, despite the COVID pandemic, we have seen the markets being resilient. In fact, we can clearly see the V-shaped recovery when you look at the chart. It just stares back at you. This V-shaped recovery, mind you, comes from the fact that the economy has been quite resilient. And that resilience comes from the fact that despite this dire consequences being painted in terms of an downturn, we now have lesser and lesser contraction being forecast as we go forward. So FY21 therefore remains quite exciting, both for the primary as well as secondary markets, because we will have quality coming to the fore, quality for investors to hunt among stocks.
Deepak, if I can come to you now, it's look at the year we've had when it comes to the equity markets. At one point, we were like, what's going on in the equity markets? Completely, living in a parallel universe from what we were seeing on ground, COVID blues, and all of that. But this is something that is true in India, but also very recently we saw on Wall Street. Look at the Airbnb IPO. You could see Brian Chesky's face so stunned during a live television program. During COVID-19, during the pandemic, travel has not bounced back fully. And look what's happening with Airbnb. DoorDash has a fantastic IPO. My point being that, it seems equity markets are certainly very hot right now. So the question also is, the point that Mahantesh was making, is it actually all about the fundamentals and the company specific? Because look at the larger trend.
Of course not, Nayantara. I may be speaking for myself here, but I don't think here fundamentals are really the driving force. It's a lot of money that's been printed. That money needs to find a place to be. Most of us, if you think about how it's trickled down even to us, we haven't been able to spend money on the stuff that we normally otherwise spend: travel, restaurants, malls. A lot of that money is just going to get saved. You can't save it in anywhere that gives you anywhere close to a decent set of return, because all your fixed deposits have fallen to 4.5%. And even liquid funds are giving 3.5%. So where does it go? It goes to equities. It's happening worldwide, and that's why money chases anything if it has a pulse, and sometimes even if it doesn't have a pulse. So a Jet Airways goes up in these times. So I think it's the function of liquidity, and until liquidity remains, markets are going to be a little astounding, but pretty much upward until something external happens that makes it stop.
But Mahantesh, a very fabulous point that Deepak has made, that you're seeing this frenzy right now. There's so much money that is chasing the equity markets. It's not necessarily all about the fundamentals. I know if you recall, in the middle of 2020, there was all this talk of whether delisting was going to become the new norm. Yes, Vedanta tried it. Adani Group stocks have talked about it. But, there was this belief and conviction in the markets that several mid-cap darlings and stocks would actually start delisting. That didn't happen. So with the kind of liquidity we're seeing, the IPO frenzy, you think will continue in the new year?
One point I would like to make here, that the liquidity that we are seeing coming into the market is chasing only a few stocks. And I'll bring back myself to the point that I made about quality. You still have a lot of mid-cap, small-cap stocks not yet come to their earlier peaks, earlier all-time highs. But the market is already at the all-time high. Nifty is at all-time high, and some of the other indices are also at all-time high. This clearly tells you that the liquidity that is there in the market is chasing only a few set of stocks which they believe are either delivering quality or have a high potential for growth. So we, while the point on liquidity is something to be taken note of, we should not forget the fact that this liquidity is not chasing a low quality stock. It's not chasing a Vodafone, for example, right? So it's chasing those companies where they believe the growth potential is very, very high. That's why the IPOs market or the primary market is also booming, because the kind of companies we find coming through the IPO route are either have no parallels, no comparables, and therefore they are unique, or they have exceptionally high balance sheet strength and comfortable growth ahead. Chemcon is one of them. It's going to sort of looking for tripling its growth in terms of sales. So quality is where the liquidity is getting reaching to, and that's why we are seeing that majority of the quality companies and within the larger index space are moving up.
Deepak, you want to come in on that? Because Mahantesh doesn't agree with you that it's only because of the printing of money, the excessive liquidity that you may have, the very fact that we are in the midst of a big bull run, that the IPO frenzy is a reality. But also the question I'd asked Mahantesh, I'd like you to answer. Are you expecting the IPO frenzy to continue in 2021?
On that, I agree, Nayantara. I think liquidity is strong. I don't think. See, my point about, I think I can agree to disagree here, but having seen, in my own experience, what we saw in the frenzies of 2007, perhaps 1999, I think sometimes stocks run up too much. There was a set of stocks called the Nifty 50 in the US in 1974. Or 1973, they were considered the 50 best stocks. They contain names that now perhaps are bankrupt, but at that time Kodak and a bunch of stocks. Nobody thought that they would ever go down. In 2 years, they were down 80%. And these are names that you probably will know now as large pharma names in the US and so on. So sometimes things change dramatically, and perhaps valuations also change. But on this front right now, when you have liquidity that's swarming the world, the US is going to print another $2.8 trillion next year. Out of that, even if 1% were to find its way to India, that's $28 billion. That's roughly 200,000 crores. That's 3 times the amount of money that the FIIs took away in March and caused a 30% drop. So I don't believe that this wave of liquidity is stopping anytime soon, unless I don't know what will happen that will take it away. But if until that sustains, I will say I agree that this rally will sustain. I don't know whether it will always remain with the stocks we have or the new IPOs that come, but some of these IPOs are so small, 200 crores, 400 crores, that retail will always want a piece of these, and then they will outbid them 100x or 50x, and they will be wildly successful. So until liquidity remains, I think the desire for the new company will always be will be attractive.
Mahantesh and Deepak, we're running out of time, but I'd like to say that maybe exactly 12 months from now in December, we talk about the primary markets and how they performed for the year 2021. We'll be looking at a whole category of new kind of companies as well, right? Like look at Flipkart, look at Zomato. I don't know whether Baiju will do it in 2021, but this is going to be, of course, a new class of companies that are planning IPOs. The government wants a mandatory listing as of now in India. So let's see how that pans out. But always a pleasure talking to you both. Thank you so much for joining us. And, we're getting you all kinds of views here on how the primary markets performed in the year 2020.